Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, Patrick, for your introduction. As you may know, I'm Paola Zellner. I teach third year and art of building and thesis students. And I'm also the director of the International Archive of Women in Architecture Center. So today I'm going to talk about the IAWA, surprise, on its 40th anniversary. I'm going to talk a little bit about the context that prompted it into existence, the need for it, talk about the initiatives that we are running, and many we're running this year, and also about its future. So the majority of architectural precedents recorded throughout history have been inducted into the canons of architecture following the dominant patriarchal systems of the time. Even today, most architectural precedents referenced in design labs and courses, whether as case studies or as exemplary references when providing feedback, are projects attributed by the profession and by the press to white men, usually singular individuals, mostly American or European. As a result, the invaluable contributions that women have made to the discipline and the built environment worldwide for millennia have been largely absent from the discourse, as so little in comparison has been attributed to women or published as such. Well-known examples of omissions in the press and history include German designer Lili Reich working with architect Mies van der Rohe in Germany in the 1900s, architect and artist Marion Mahoney Griffin working with architect Frank Lloyd Wright in the United States in the late 1800s and early 1900s. In Argentina, writer and architect Delfina Galvez Bunge, collaborating with her husband, architect Amancio Williams, also in the 1900s. And even today, Annalisa Zumthor-Korad and Peter Zumthor, amongst many, many others. In 2014, the Royal Institute of British Architects hosted an exhibit of these 6 architects titled "The Brits Who Built the Modern World," including, starting from the left, Michael Hopkins, Nicholas Grimshaw, Sir Norman Foster, Paddy Hopkins, co-founder with Michael Hopkins of Hopkins Architects, Richard Rogers, and Terry Farrell. The photo was taken at the gallery's opening of the exhibit. The BBC produced a TV series linked to the exhibit, also entitled "The Brits Who Built the Modern World." But the image used by the BBC was this one, an image where Photoshop was employed allegedly by the photographer to erase Paddy Hopkins. Peter Lloyd, an academic, a British academic, and also was an advisor, one of the advisors for this project, sadly says that the photoshopped image is a perfect visual illustration of what happened in architecture and design to many, many women. Narratives of male supremacy in the creative process are dominant and perhaps sometimes true. More often, however, they are not. And this process is how the narrative of the all-conquering white male architect is created and reinforced. I would have no issue if this image had been paired with this title: 5 of the best-known male Brits who developed high-tech architecture in the UK. It's a long title, but because it implies that there are more male architects, it says male Brits, so I would not expect to see a woman in this image. And they developed high-tech architecture in the UK rather than building the modern world, which is a different scale. So this title would be more appropriate in my opinion. Even this one would be fine. 5 guys would be more appropriate. But this one is really unacceptable. And if you dig a little deeper, not only was Paddy Hopkins erased, but the goal of this program was to showcase their long careers and project associations. And in doing that, they omitted Wendy Cheeseman, who was wife of Foster, and Sue Bromwell, who was wife of Richard Rogers. The 2 couples in the early 60s co-founded the firm Team 4, and they worked together, the 4 of them. So if they're talking about their life careers, Paddy should not have been erased, and the other 2 women should have been included as well, not omitted. But they are very seldom mentioned, if at all. I think that this title is pompous, perhaps ambitious. Some may even say arrogant. But more than anything, it is extremely inaccurate, historically inaccurate, an absolute misrepresentation. So to repeat what Peter Lloyd said, this is a process. This process is how the narrative of the all-conquering white male architect is created and reinforced. Now, if we look at another area, a different area, prizes and awards. So we can look at the Pritzker Prize. You may have heard of it. Is the equivalent, they say it's equivalent of the Nobel Prize for Architecture. It was a prize established by the Pritzkers in 1979 to honor a living architect whose built work demonstrates a combination of those qualities of talent, vision, and commitment, which has produced consistent and significant contributions to humanity and the built environment through the art of architecture. So the prize was established in 1979. It starts down here with Philip Johnson was the first one awarded. Every year, and then year 27, so 27 years after the prize is established, the first woman wins the prize. Now we can also go back a little bit to the red dot over there, Robert Venturi in 1991. So this was quite controversial because he was awarded the prize, but he had been working for over 22 years as partners with Denise Scott Brown. They were a couple and they were partners. And they had worked together, but they awarded him and not her. Some of the things that were said at that time is because the definition of the prize says architect, a singular, so they had to choose. Okay, they could have chosen Denise, but okay, fine. So then we move along, and I guess they changed the definition when they hit Herzog and de Muren, because maybe they couldn't decide if they give it to Herzog or to de Muren. So the definition changed, and now it's to honor a living architect or architects, which is great because then 6 years after Zaha Hadid, we get Sana, so Kazuyo Sejima could be awarded together with Nishizawa. So everything is good until 2012, when Wang Shu, who's founding partner with his wife, Lu Wenyu, they found the firm Amateur Architecture Studio, he got awarded the prize and not her. There was a lot of publicity again. She said she didn't want to be in the spotlight, et cetera, but the reality is that the jury did not award her the project. She could have declined, but it was not awarded to her, just him. But, well, a few years later, we start seeing a few more women showing up, RCR, and then Grafton, and Lacaton Vassal. So, but the reasons why I'm showing all this is not so that we get all pissed off about it, but it's just to understand the complex layering of bias embedded in every step of the way, and how difficult it is to counteract this imbalanced situation. You can look at the prize and say, okay, who is nominating the architects? Who is selecting the jury? Who are the jury, right? And so every layer could have a degree of bias. If you go back to this one, I still don't understand it. They're all colleagues, they've all worked together. Who said, yes, it's okay to remove her? Allegedly, the photographer made that decision. Did he do it on his own? Did he not double check with somebody else? None of them. Her husband didn't say anything. I mean, nobody said anything. It's just, I think it's not like her husband is bad. I think that it's just very multi-layered bias grandfathered into all this, and we have to try and break it down. So arguably, not every person and event could or should be recorded in history. Many men have been excluded from it for multiple reasons, yet women have been omitted and erased as a group solely on the basis of their sex, not on merit, but on their sex for being born women. American academic Carol Smith Rosenberg argues that to ignore women is to misunderstand and distort the entire organization of that society. We need to learn about their wide-ranging contributions to the field. Within the field of architecture, historian Despina Stratigakos refers to the omission of women's contributions as a form of damnatio memoriae, an action of historical erasure employed by ancient Romans. But she asserts that women architects, rather than forgotten, have been condemned not to be remembered by modern architectural history. And this has grave consequences for architecture. So this is about women, and this is also about minorities, although women are not a minority. But it is most importantly about architecture. And this erasure cannot be remediated without archives or without records. And that is where Milka comes in. So the IWA was founded 40 years ago in 1985 and was a project led by Bulgarian-American architect Milka Blishnikov. Blishnikov emigrated, already an architect, from Bulgaria to the US in 1961. She completed her PhD in Columbia in 1971. And she joined the faculty in our college at that time called the College of Architecture and Urban Studies in 1974. Prompted by her students who asked why works by women were never mentioned in school, Blishnikov recognized that they were seldom mentioned by the press, by history, and therefore non-existent in academia. There was a vast void which she realized could only be filled by the archive of the designers themselves. In the absence of all else, their archives, their personal papers, were the only source of information available that could prove their contributions to the discipline and the built environment. As French historian Fustel de Coulanges concisely and very clearly stated, no documents, no history. So Blishnikov spearheaded the effort to establish the archive, to preserve documents and any available records of women's practices in special collections in Newman Library. So in case you don't know, the collections are in Newman Library. They're really close by and you should visit. They're wonderful. In the process of collecting documents, Blishnikov also encountered that in addition to all the other layers of bias, the absence of publication, in addition to the absence of publication and proper historical credit, women were generally reticent to donate their papers, believing them to possess little value, when seen through the established patriarchal lens that assumes that only famous architects and their iconic buildings are worth publishing. American journalist and history professor at Harvard, Jill Lepore, cites an earlier historian, Charles Brockden Brown, who in 1806 published an essay called Historical Characters Are False Representations of Nature, where he questions the emphasis that written history has placed on greatness and the impact this has had, the unfairness of this tendency toward the vast number of those that have been obscured by the idealization of a selected few. Lepore asks, what would it mean to write the history of an age not only from what has been saved, but also from what has been lost? What would it mean to write a history concerned not only with the lives of the famous, but also with the lives of the obscure? And I add, what would it mean to write a history of architecture, concerned with the well-being of humanity in a thriving environment, rather than a history of the famous? If we direct our focus away from the famous characters and direct our curiosity instead toward architecture, we will find within records worth preserving that drawings, for example, among many other artifacts, are powerful artifacts. For in the process of developing, representing, and conveying an idea or a design, they also capture aspects of the maker, of the discipline, the context, and the values of the time. Susan Collins, in producing this assessment chart for architectural drawings, reveals a wealth of information layered in a drawing beyond the building they might convey. So if you look at it, she breaks it into lots of criteria of things that she wants to look into. So you could look at historically at the person that makes it, the place, the event, the architectural style, socially, the ways of living, the ways of working, building use and building type, building technology, drawing technology and conditions, and many more. So a drawing really holds a lot more than what's literally drawn on it. These records, like this drawing by Olive Chadane, dated March 1925, so this is a 100-year-old drawing, and it is in the collections in Newman Library, not only present the explicit content of their projects, but also reveal information related to professional practices, particular forms of thought and representation, forms of expressions, processes, and methods in different countries, and general knowledge of architecture, reasons why it is so crucial to find and preserve these records. These artifacts reflect very valuable contextual historical circumstances in which women practiced. Maybe the fact that Lilia Scala was compelled to write my design on this item reveals something about the context in the 1920s when this was produced. Milka began contacting women architects throughout the United States and Europe, as well as national and international professional organizations, by sending over 1,000 personal letters announcing the establishment of the archive here at Virginia Tech and inviting them to donate their papers to it. In addition, she also traveled to multiple countries for events, congresses, and network building. Keep in mind that this was early 80s. There was no internet or social media at the time. So in her letters, she underlined that the scope of the archives will be international and will include work from the beginning of women's involvement in architecture in any capacity up to the present time. Milka knew that the paths into architecture for women had been challenging, not always allowed to attend college, to apprentice, to obtain the professional license, or to practice in firms, but had contributed anyway, and in spite of all barriers and obstructions. When thinking about what should be preserved, the short piece on exactitude in science by Argentine writer and poet Jorge Luis Borges narrates the unfortunate fate of the map of the empire that cartographers striving for perfection struck at the same size of the empire, 1-to-1 scale. Rendered useless, the map was eventually abandoned and neglected, becoming a ruin, a relic of the disciplines of geography. The story raises questions about what should be recorded and whether it is possible or even necessary to preserve it all. Surveying the historical landscape in the 1980s, Blizhnikov advocated for preserving everything that could be found. She did so because beyond the fundamental need for the material, she understood the magnitude of the omission. While history has, as we have seen, traditionally revolved around the patriarchal illusion of exceptionalism of famous individuals, the archive strives instead to reveal the exceptional aggregation of contributions made by the global community of women toward a larger cause. There are innumerable examples in the IWA collections of women that, while unrecognized, have been pioneers, expanding the boundary of what was admissible and allowed, or what was expected of the profession and of women. Prompted by Milka's invitation, the archive began to receive material from women around the world and is filled with treasures worth studying, like this drawing by Lilia Scala while a student at the University of Dresden, where she graduated in 1920. The large collection of South African landscape architect Elsa Leviseur. This is a 1987 drawing. Ink and tempera drawing by Vera Jansson while a student at l'École des Beaux-Arts in the 1940s. She later worked with Le Corbusier, then emigrated to the United States, did her master's at IIT. Her advisor was Miss Van der Rohe, and later moved to California and worked there. Jane Duncombe's White Oak Theater and her study of flexible use and flexible seating. Kimiko Suzuki's detailed drawing for a house she designed and built in Japan in 1967. A student project for a hospital in Argentina by Martha Bilmanovich in the mid-60s. In looking for material, I also found this interview, which I thought was very interesting. She said that soon after graduating in the early 60s, she moved with her husband to the US. So this was 1964. Firms simply wouldn't hire me because they thought women were trouble in the drafting room. The Ritchie organization was willing to take a chance because I had done a hospital project in school that was fairly good. For a long time, I was the only woman professional in the office. So work hard on your projects. You never know. You may be hired for one of these projects. Or a sketch by landscape architect and urbanist Diana Balmori, who was a partner of Cesar Pelli, among thousands and thousands of others. So, on its 40th anniversary, we, the executive committee, are these 5 people. You recognize them all. Elizabeth lectured here, is at the WAC and lectured here 2 weeks ago. We have hosted and are organizing initiatives to celebrate and broadcast the existence of the IWA. We offer the annual prize of $5,000 to invite researchers worldwide to write history, employing material in the IWA collections. We also offer a $5,000 prize, the IWA Christine Fallon Prize. This one is every 2 years for publication-ready manuscripts that respond to a different topic for every cycle. Usually we're looking for places where, or circumstances where women may have been made invisible, like working for very large firms, and or this year we're looking at conflict, so places of conflict, war, migration, et cetera, and what is the impact of that on women's career. We also hosted in March the annual symposium, and this year's call for presentation responded to the theme Building Connections, Networks Past, Present, and Future as a way to honor Milka and the work that she did in generating and growing the network of women architects around the globe. We invited, our keynote speaker was Hansi Better-Barraza, principal and co-founder of Studio Luz Architects in Boston. While she was teaching at Harvard and RISD, she created digital archives with the students, digital archives for women, including queer and ethnic minorities. And we had multiple presentation sessions during the symposium, the last one grouping the Milka Blishnikov Research Prize recipients of the last 3 cycles. And we have here researchers from the USA, Australia, Italy, and Spain. At the top, Laurie Brown and Karen Burns have recently published the encyclopedia, Women in Architecture, 1960-2020, that has over 1,000 entries about women from 135 countries. So this is going to be an outstanding resource for updating our precedents and histories. In 2018, together with Professor Donna Dene, we launched the initiative One by One, which urgently seeks to make visible as many women as possible in architecture and design worldwide, by basically asking each one to donate one original 2-dimensional item that reflects a breakthrough or inflection point in her education or career, accompanied by a handwritten text describing the relevance of that piece, telling the story around that breakthrough or inflection point. We have, in recent years, organized, the call is open, ongoing, but we have organized different chapters to target more directly with deadlines. People respond better to deadlines. So we have partnered with people in other countries and other cities and have hosted several of these. I'm going to talk about a few of them because they had additional impact. So this one was one of the first ones with Ana Maria Pinzón, who's an advisor of the IWA from Colombia. We organized the call and the collection that gathered 70 items by 70 women from 14 different regions of Colombia. So the initiative had great impact. It was the first one we attempted at this scale and outside of the US, so it served as a pilot. Prior to the initiative, there was no Colombian representation in the IWA archive. Now we know 70 Colombian women in architecture. And just over a month ago, it was announced that the archive of the papers of Gloria Ferro Vela, a Colombian pioneer and urbanist, will be the first collection of work produced by a woman architect to be preserved in the archive of Bogotá, Colombia. She passed away in 2020, and her daughter donated a piece for her in 2022 when we did the One by One Colombia collection, and that prompted the negotiations to preserve her whole body of work now in Bogotá's archive. So we're very happy and excited about that. This is the Argentine network, Soy Arquitecta, that we paired with to do the one by one Argentina, and it was also very successful. It collected 105 pieces representing 105 women from 12 different provinces or states of the country. And it culminated in a month-long public exhibit hosted by the CEPAO, which is the equivalent of the AIA. And it was also very impactful as it was the first exhibition of its kind in the city and in the country, showing the works of 105 women architects. The summer of 2024, we completed the one by one WIFA Japan collection, which gathered 48 items by 48 women. And the exhibit showed at the Kenchiku Kaikan Gallery, the Architecture Institute of Japan. And then it was shipped over here, and you may have seen it, hopefully, this past spring. During the symposium, we exhibited the one by one WIFA Japan exhibit, which is a wonderful exhibit. And it is beautiful as a collection to be able to see the individualities, but also recognize a strong common interest of women architects in Japan of this period for being of service to elders, children, those with reduced mobility, and those living with illness. In reading their individual personal stories, it was also interesting to realize that the majority of these women paused their practice for 10 or more years during childbearing years to later return to some form of practice. Several left practice altogether, and one opened her own practice. So it helps to understand the hardship that social structures imposed on women at the time with regard to family and caretaking. The latest one that we have gathered is a one by one Chicago. This was completed this summer. And it culminated again with an exhibit in Crown Hall at IIT. It opened in August, and it showed for a month. It collected 100 items by 60 women. So these women were a little bit more, we'll send you more, which is really nice. More than what you're asking for. So the exhibit is still packaged in Chicago. We're hoping it will arrive here in Blacksburg in time to be exhibited for the 2026 IW Symposium in March. We are launching also the one by one VT alumni. We thought it was a good one for the 40th anniversary to celebrate all the women that graduated from our program since its inception, 1969. The first one graduated in 1969 or 1970. So hopefully that collection will arrive at the WAC and will be exhibited there in March, and later will come to Kogel the following fall. We'll exhibit it here. We'll have a big party. We have others, people have been contacting, wanting to partner to organize these. So upcoming are one by one Boston, one by one San Antonio, Texas, one by one Korea, one by one Ecuador, one by one Portugal, and one by one Costa Rica. So we have some traveling in the next few years. This project is also a very important project for me. It's an immersive digital exhibit that I designed last year to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the IAWA. And it's showing at the European Cultural Center in Palazzo Bembo in Venice as part of their collective exhibit, Time, Space, Existence, 2025 Architecture Venice Biennale, from May 10th through November 23rd. So it's still up for a few weeks if you happen to go to Venice. A month ago, they reported having received 200,000 visitors, which it's a wonderful exposure for the IAWA. Collaborators in the exhibit include Dr. Nicholas Polis, Director of Visual Computing, Ben Sandbrook, Systems Engineer, Charles Nichols, Associate Professor of Music and Composer, Jade Snelling, the Archivist of the IAWA, and Elizabeth Gray, who's a recent graduate who was the president of the IAWA Student Club and worked with me in the curation of the material for the exhibit. The exhibit mostly features perspectival drawings and architectural photographs from the IAWA collections to create a dynamic, immersive environment that aims with its scale to offer architectural and spatial experiences of the women's works. The digital projection flows and changes at a gentle pace. Biographical information and portraits of the architects emerge from the vanishing point of the perspectival images, enhancing the sense of depth of the virtual space. Personal quotes give human presence and voice to each of the featured women, inviting viewers to connect with their experiences and recognize similar instances in their own lives. A pivotal element is the music. For the immersive quality is the music composed by Charles Nichols. The piece features different string instruments playing separately from all corners of the gallery, interweaving into a spatial soundscape. It's delicate and nostalgic, and it invites quiet reflection, enhancing the exhibit's evocative atmosphere. 40 by 40 aims to raise awareness of the IWA's mission, and as a call to action, encourages visitors to support its vital efforts. Here I have a little short video, but I don't know if it's going to play. How do I make it play? Or if there's going to be sound. Is it playing? Oh, it's playing. I don't hear the sound. Well, the sound is awesome. So 2 weeks after the opening, in Venice, I chaired a roundtable discussion that asked, what is the future of archiving and what is the future of women's records? As we aim collectively to envision an archive of the future that would promote a balanced history of architecture. So this was a panel, it wasn't a roundtable, it's a panel. And the 4 guests were invited because in different ways, they had interacted with the archive. So Martha Thorne, who served for many years as executive director of the Pritzker Architecture Prize, was in the early 2000s an advisor to the board of the IWA. Katja Edens is a historian from the Netherlands who studies archives as instruments, as artifacts, as objects, as institutions, let's say. She's a blonde one. The one with the microphone is Teresita Scalco, who is the director of the archive of UAV, the University Institute of Architecture of Venice. And then Fabio Marino, who was a 2024 Milka Bleshnikov Research Prize, who used the collection. So everybody had some perspective into the IWA collections, and I like the idea of gathering those 4 very different perspectives around the archive and the future of women's records. So today, the IWA holding close to or about 500 collections representing 48 countries with material written in 17 different languages, remains the only archive of its kind in the world. And we have it here on campus, but it's the only one of its kind. Katja Edens, the historian that I showed a little while ago, has been researching archives in general to understand them as institutions and how they are organized. And she provided this slide where she's looking at 6 different archives, 2 in the Netherlands, 1 in France, 1 in Germany, and 2 in the United States. And as she says, counting is a feminist act. She counted the collections in each of these archives and realized that for all of these, the numbers in red are the percentage of women's archives in collections in those archives. So it's about 2.3% of work saved in the archive is work of women. So this highlights the importance of these collecting initiatives like One by One, and the critical need to establish women's archives around the world. So we are currently crafting an international call for design ideas for each participant or team to envision a women's archive in their city or country. It's open to everyone. This program seeks to raise the awareness of the underrepresentation of women in architectural archives, of the general absence of collections dedicated to women, and the urgent need to establish women's archives internationally as institutional entities, but also as necessary symbols. Imagine hundreds of architects around the world responding to this call, envisioning at the same time the establishment of women's archives in their countries. Imagine that energy, imagine that exhibit. Imagine that possibility of a global network of women's archives, making the uncommon common. Allowing what has been kept unprecedented by omission or erasure to be seen, to be known, to become precedent. I look forward to it. Thank you. I thought it would be super long, so I went really fast. I can go again. Somebody over there has a.
Thanks for the lecture. When, in the beginning, you were mentioning a lot of female architects aren't being represented, even though they've been like partners with their husbands in practice. You already sort of touched on it when you mentioned that the husbands aren't bad people for not doing anything about it, but they're at fault, aren't they?
Yeah. They are.
What should they be doing? Like, obviously, they should be speaking out and recognizing their lives more often. But on top of that, like, what else can they do?
I think that you should just not accept the situation. Just say, no, I'm not going to be part of that exhibit. No, I'm not going to be part of that show. No, here, take back your Pritzker Prize. It's a big one to do, but it's like, it's true. How then do you go back home and deal with that, right? It's a little bit like uncomfortable, maybe. I mean, this was so many years ago. Denise Scott Brown is still upset. It's true, and she should be, right? But it's what happens at large scale, small scale, in many different scenarios. And so it's really important that we are all aware of this, because we all need to work toward it. It's not dependent on women to make it better, because it is not about women, it is about architecture, and it benefits us all, right? And so and it's unfair. And so we all need to step up when there's unfairness, right? And so I also understand, and I know that most likely at that time, the same way as Lou, when you said, I don't want to be in the spotlight, I don't want the Pritzker, in a way she's also enabling this, right? Because she should have said, no, I need to be awarded, I need to be recognized, but I don't want it. It's different than not giving it to her when she has done, the work as in a partnership with her husband, right? And so I understand that there are women that maybe, that woman that was erased from the photograph, maybe she was, okay, it's fine, no worries, no worries. And so in a way she's also enabling it. But the thing is that we need to recognize it, understand how it is embedded and ingrained everywhere in our society, and then every time we recognize it or see it, we need to counteract it. Not easy, but. Yes?
What can we as students do to contribute and carry on the mission of the IWA? If we're in academia and then outside doing that.
Yes. Well, I think it's interesting, and that's why I also told that story. I mean, when Milka arrived here late 70s or mid 70s, you know, it was a little bit the conversation with students that prompted her to go to the library, look at books, and realize there's not much, if anything, right? And so I think that it's important to be active that way. So if you want to know something or see something that you're not seeing, you need to speak up, right, and participate. And then we have, of course, the IWA Student Club, and we help with the initiatives and with the symposium, and we host guests, and we try to be active. And the idea is that once the students graduate, they remain IWA liaisons, so that when they go into practice, they're still aware of this, and they're promoting the IWA, they're promoting the work of women, they're making sure that there's fairness in the working environment or anywhere else that they may go, grad school or whatever, right? And so it is a lot is about awareness, about knowing. Because I know for myself, in most cases, I always thought that these things were objective, right? Like the prizes and books and everything, it's kind of objective. But then you start realizing that it is not that way. And so we need to raise the awareness first. Once you're aware, then you're more likely to pick up when something is out of balance, right? And then you can act. Yes, sir.
What is the availability of the materials in the archive? Is it digitized? Can it be accessed online by researchers?
Yes, well, it's a very slow process. There are many collections. There's a ton of work. There are, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, they were still digitizing according to requests by researchers. If they're working on something, they would ask for an image, and so it would be digitized. 10 years ago, the archive got a grant to digitize 30 collections, large collections. I think they digitized 10 large collections. I mean, again, there's thousands of artifacts in those collections. And so if they, for example, if the architect donated her notebooks, they have to scan every page of the notebook and every page of everything that has been donated. So it's a heavy lift. They're doing it, but it's slow. Resources are always limited. But so they're being digitized, and they're trying to they are putting it online. It's just that there's, at this point, I think it's 12 or 13 collections out of the 500 have been digitized. But they're working on it. So that's why we invite people to come to the archive to see the work. Of course, we're a little...
Did you partially digitize the collection? In other words, whether the digitization donated have a representative sample of all the architects represented?
I think that could be done. I don't know if it depends on the obsession of the archivist, if she can handle that. The orderly way of doing certain things. But it's also interesting because things have been digitized for decades, but if you go to some of those files 20 years ago, they're 2 bytes, right? And so it's always it's an eternal catching up or trying to catch up, right? So everything that had been digitized 15 years ago needs to be digitized again, right? But yes, there's always this open conversation as to how to make the material available to the world so that the research can be done and the history can be written, et cetera. Yeah. Yes?
What's the accessibility of the archive like on campus? What are its hours? Can students come in? Can the community members come into the archive?
Yes, it's open to the public. It's an educational academic resource, so they like to have people come and visit, researchers, but also people from the community or anybody who can be interested or curious about looking at work. We have taken students, I take students, we do projects in lab that relate to it. So we go to the archive with the IWA club. We have organized in the past years tours to take students to the archive. But anyone can go. It's open Monday, Friday, I think from 8 to 5. And you can contact the archivist ahead of time if there's something particular that you want to see and tell her, I want to see this and that. You have to give her the collection number. You can find it on their website. And then they prepare the material so that when you arrive, it's there for you to study. So yes, it's very open. It's on the ground floor of Newman Library next to the coffee shop. Right? When you enter, it's on the right. So it's easy to get to. Yeah, okay. Yes?
Having the archive on campus, why is it not better used in our histories of architecture course that all first and second years are required to take?
Repeat the last part of the question, sorry.
Why is it not better used in our histories of architecture course that first and second years are required to take?
Oh, I don't know. I don't teach it. No, I don't know. I mean, it is there. The thing is also, it's understandable. The inertia is understandable. The inertia toward change, or the effort that it would take to change or to move it gradually to more balanced, will take time, and it takes effort, right? If you look at, again, when I started preparing my course for art of building, and I started looking for books that show case studies to use in the class, and the majority of those books show the same projects over and over again. It's like the projects, the majority, I would say maybe 1% are by women in those books. And I don't say that everybody's mean that does that. I say I understand that it takes work, and it takes effort, and it takes time, and it takes many people wanting it. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. I just don't understand why we don't want it then. Because it's the idea that it's this resource that we're supposed to have and use and benefit from. And I didn't find out about it until second year when I had art building with you. That was the first time that I really heard about the archive.
Right. Well, it takes many, many parts and many people and many interests and effort to change it. So, we are again with the club. The idea is to organize the tours for foundation students, so that the moment they arrive here, they already know about this, right? And we're just pecking all around it, trying to move it forward, but it won't be the IWA that does it alone. I mean, it needs to be many, many, many people around the world pushing in the same direction. Yes?
So the study conducted in 2022 about the data of the different archives, percentage of women's projects. Would you say that in 2025 it would be a lot higher, or do you think that data is higher? Do you think it's gradually getting more and more prolific, in terms of the percentage of the
No, it's probably it went from 2.3 to 2.4%. It takes a long time, and again, that it requires many things. It requires women or their relatives of women pass away thinking that this is valuable and preserving it, because a lot of the material also is lost that way. The women pass away, they didn't know about the IWA, or they didn't bequeath their work. The relatives are emptying the house because their aunt passed away, and they have all these papers, and they just pitch them, right? It makes sense. It happens a lot. So a lot of material is lost that way unknowingly. But it requires, again, a lot of awareness and networking and people knowing that it exists and people seeing the value in the work so that it is preserved. And so it's many, many, many layers. So we understand that our role as the archive is to make a lot of noise so that people know that it's here, right? And so we make all these events and initiatives and exhibitions, and we just try to make sure that people know, because once they know, we may save more work. You know, there's this story, I always tell it, I like it, about, I don't remember the town in Virginia. If somebody remembers, say it. But actually a graduate from our school was walking down the street and walked by a dumpster. They were emptying the house. And he saw rolls of drawings, and being an architect, he recognized that. So he picked up the drawings from the dumpster and went home, and then looked at them and realized that they were drawings by a woman. And he contacted the IWA, and he sent the material here, and it happened to be Mary Brown Channel, which was the first woman licensed in the state of Virginia ever. If he had taken a different route, we would have lost that material, because the relatives were emptying the house. I mean, what do they know, right? And so a lot of it is lost that way, but it takes really people knowing that the IWA exists. So he was able to contact the IWA. So our goal is to promote the work of the archive, but mostly to make a lot of noise so that people around the world know. We're also understanding that it's a small archive, that we cannot hold all the collections of the world, right? And that's why we're promoting, helping people imagine, first understand that realize that there are no archives in their own cities or countries, right? And then help them imagine that there could be. Again, it's a long shot because there's a lot that needs to happen in order for an archive to exist. But until you think it or know that you don't have one and then start wanting one, it won't happen otherwise. And so there may be institutions, you know, maybe doing this kind of initiative alerts established archives to be more open to receiving the work of women, or it may help somewhere, one archive may open. I don't know. But we're also open to ideas. If you think of anything that will promote or make the archive more visible. Yes?
Having a relation with like the profession itself, because having an archive is something that gets you recognized and seeing something that's not like in the example of a woman that was kept out, it's sort of discouraging to the profession itself. So by keeping this archive of examples, it's something that might increase its numbers over time by having that be exposed to the public.
Sorry, can you, because I hear some voices, some words, but then not others, and I'm trying to put it together.
Like, do you think it's gonna build over time because it's like gaining exposure like over time to the profession as well by seeing like examples of something? It's a little like about gaining traction.
Yes, I'm hopeful that that will happen. That if we keep on, you know, making noise and inviting researchers and putting out initiatives and publishing and going to conferences and going to events and talking to people and inviting people, you know, that eventually it will. It has grown quite a bit in the last, 10, 15 years. I would go to conferences and people would not know what the IWA was, right? And now it's known. So there's hope there. Hopefully it continues exponentially. Anything else? Okay, thank you.